My DIL called me trash at Thanksgiving. Then the lawyer called with my $50 million inheritance. My daughter-in-law Sarah was carving the turkey with my late husband's knife when she turned to the table and announced, "We've decided Mom needs to go into a home. The cheap one on Riverside Drive will do fine since she won't know the difference soon anyway." The green bean casserole I'd made from scratch tumbled from my hands, splattering across my own kitchen floor as my son David nodded in agreement, already pulling out his phone to show everyone the psychiatric evaluation forms he'd forged with Dr. Morrison's signature. What they didn't know was that I'd been recording everything on the nanny cam I'd hidden in the centerpiece after overhearing them planning this 3 weeks ago, and that the lawyer had called that very morning about the $50 million inheritance from my estranged brother Harold that I hadn't told a soul about yet. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how a 67-year-old widow from Burlington, Vermont, ended up secretly rich, while her own flesh and blood tried to have her committed for a measly $340,000 house and my teacher's pension. 6 months ago, I was just Ruth Winters, living alone in the 4-bedroom colonial, where I'd raised my 3 children after Tom died of a heart attack in 2018. The house was paid off, I had about $87,000 in savings, and my monthly pension of $3,200 kept me comfortable. I still volunteered at the library on Tuesdays, played bridge with the ladies on Thursdays, and babysat my grandson Peter whenever Sarah and David needed me, which was often, since free childcare suited their budget while they renovated their McMansion on the other side of town. David was my middle child, always ambitious, always hungry for more. He'd married Sarah straight out of college, a pretty blonde from Connecticut who looked at our family photos like she was cataloging assets. My oldest, Jennifer, lived in Seattle with her partner Marie, calling every Sunday without fail. My youngest, Michael, had died in Afghanistan in 2009, and his absence still echoed through every family gathering. Here's the thing about getting older. People start treating you like you're already half dead. The checkout girl speaks louder and slower. Your doctor explains things 3 times. And your children? They start having conversations about your future care while you're standing right there holding the coffee pot. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday morning in May. I'd gone to the bank to deposit a check from selling Tom's vintage tools, and the teller, sweet Monica, who'd known me for 15 years, looked confused. "Mrs. Winters, this account shows a hold notice. You'll need to speak with the manager." Mr. Peterson emerged from his glass office with that fake concerned look people get when delivering bad news. "Ruth, there's been a request to monitor your accounts for unusual activity. Your son David filed paperwork suggesting you might be experiencing cognitive decline." My coffee nearly came back up. "He did what?" "He presented a letter from a doctor, Morrison, stating concerns about your mental capacity. It's not a legal hold, but we're required to notify him of any transactions over $500. Dr. Morrison. I'd seen him exactly once, 6 months prior, for a routine physical where David had insisted on accompanying me just to help with all those complicated medical terms, Mom. I drove home with shaking hands, my mind racing. At my age, you learn to recognize a con when you see one, and my own son was running one on me. But why? The house was worth something, sure, and they knew about my savings and pension. But this elaborate? This felt bigger. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I pretended to take my evening medications but palmed them instead. David had been so insistent about helping me organize my pills lately, bringing over a new weekly organizer and watching me take them. Within an hour of my fake dosing, he called. "Mom, how are you feeling? Any confusion? Dizziness?" "Oh, I'm fine, dear. Just watching Jeopardy." "You sure? Sarah and I could come over." "No need. I'm about to go to bed anyway." But I didn't go to bed. I sat in Tom's old recliner with the lights off and waited. At 10:47 p.m., I heard the back door open, the one where we kept the spare key under the ceramic frog. David's voice carried through the darkness, talking on his phone. "She should be completely out by now. The Ambien dose I've been adding should knock her out for hours. Yeah, we can look for it tonight. If Harold left her anything in that will, we need to know before the lawyers contact her." Harold. My older brother Harold, who'd cut off all contact with the family in 1979 after a fight with our father about his lifestyle. Harold, who'd moved to San Francisco, started some tech company, and became the family ghost no one mentioned. Harold, who, unbeknownst to David, had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, according to a Google search I'd done 3 months ago when nostalgic curiosity got the better of me. I heard David's footsteps on the stairs, Sarah's heels clicking behind him. They went straight to my office, Tom's old study where I kept all the important papers. Through the crack under the door, I could see the flashlight beams dancing. "Check every envelope," Sarah whispered. "Legal stuff would be in a large envelope. There's nothing here from any lawyers except that old will of Dad's. What about safe deposit boxes? Bank statements?" I've been monitoring her accounts for 3 months. No payments to any law firms, no unusual deposits. The house alone is worth at least $340,000 in this market, plus her savings and pension. If we can get power of attorney, we're looking at $500,000 minimum once we sell everything. The doctor said the competency hearing could happen within 2 months if we document enough incidents. My stomach churned. They weren't just planning to take my money. They were planning to take my freedom, my dignity, my entire life. I heard them closing drawers, whispering about checking my bedroom. I quickly made my way upstairs, slipping into bed and forcing my breathing to deepen just as my bedroom door cracked open. The flashlight beam swept across my face. I kept my features slack, even managing a small snore. "See? Out cold," David whispered. "The medication is working perfectly." They left after another hour of searching. I lay awake until dawn, my mind spinning with rage and hurt and something else. Determination. They thought I was just a helpless old woman. They were about to learn that 40 years of teaching high school had taught me more about strategy than they could imagine. The next morning, Wednesday, I drove to the Burlington Public Library and used their computer to create a new email address. Then I searched for every Harold Winters in San Francisco until I found an obituary from 2 weeks prior. Harold had died on May 2nd, leaving behind no spouse or children. The obituary mentioned he'd been CEO of WinterTech Solutions, which a quick search revealed had been sold to Microsoft in 2001 for $73 million. My hands trembled as I searched for law firms handling his estate. On the 4th try, I found it. Brennan, Locke & Associates had posted a discreet notice seeking next of kin for Harold James Winters. I called from the library's courtesy phone. "Brennan, Locke & Associates, how may I direct your call? My name is Ruth Winters. I believe you're handling my brother Harold's estate." There was a pause. "Please hold." The hold music seemed to last forever before a deep voice came on. "Mrs. Winters? This is James Brennan. We've been trying to locate you for 3 weeks. Your brother left very specific instructions. You're the sole beneficiary of his entire estate." The room spun. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your brother's estate, after taxes and disbursements, comes to approximately $50 million. He left a letter explaining he'd always regretted the family estrangement and wanted to ensure you were taken care of. We've sent multiple certified letters to your address." I haven't received anything. But suddenly, I knew why David had been so frantically searching. He must have intercepted them somehow. "Mr. Brennan, I need to ask you something in confidence. Has anyone else contacted you about this?" "Actually, yes. A man claiming to be your son called yesterday, saying you were incompetent and he had power of attorney. We found it suspicious since Harold's will specifically stated you were of sound mind as of his last verification 3 months ago when he hired a private investigator to check on you. Harold had been checking on me after all these years. Mr. Brennan, I need your help. Can we meet in person? Privately? How about tomorrow? Our Boston office might be more discreet than Burlington." I agreed, hung up, and sat in the library parking lot crying for 20 minutes. Crying for Harold, for the brother I'd lost to prejudice and pride. Crying for Michael, who would never see justice for what his brother was doing. And crying for myself, for the betrayal that cut deeper than any knife could. But tears dry, and when they did, I had work to do. That afternoon, I visited 3 stores. Best Buy for a recording device that looked like a pen, Target for a hidden camera that appeared to be a picture frame, and Radio Shack for a voice-activated recorder I could hide in my purse. The teenage clerks were incredibly helpful once I explained I was worried about elder abuse. Apparently, I wasn't the first grandmother they'd helped with surveillance equipment. Then I did something else. I called Jennifer in Seattle. "Mom? It's Wednesday afternoon. Is everything okay?" "Sweetheart, I need you to listen carefully and not interrupt. David and Sarah are trying to have me declared incompetent to steal my money. I have proof, and I have a plan, but I need you to pretend you know nothing if they call you." The silence stretched before Jennifer exploded. "That son of a bitch. I knew something was off when he kept asking about your health, wanting copies of your medical records for emergencies. There's more. Uncle Harold died and left me money. A lot of money. David knows something, but not everything." "Uncle Harold? Mom, how much?" "Enough that David's little scheme makes more sense now. I need you to document every conversation with him. Record if you can. I'm meeting with lawyers tomorrow." "Should I fly out?" "Numbers, stay there. Let them think they're getting away with it. But Jennifer, thank you for believing me. Mom, you're the sharpest person I know. If David thinks he can pull one over on you, he's about to learn why you were voted teacher most likely to catch you cheating 15 years running." Thursday morning, I drove to Boston, taking 3 different routes and doubling back twice. Paranoia, perhaps, but David had been showing up at odd times lately, just checking in. The law offices of Brennan, Locke & Associates occupied the entire 47th floor of a gleaming tower. James Brennan himself met me in the marble lobby, a distinguished black man in his 60s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Mrs. Winters, it's an honor. Your brother spoke of you often in his final months." We sat in a conference room overlooking the harbor, and James spread out documents that made my head spin. Harold had left me everything: the $50 million in mixed assets, his San Francisco penthouse, his art collection, and a letter. I read it 3 times, tears streaming down my face. "Ruth, I know I failed you as a brother. I let Dad's hatred become a wall between us. I've watched from afar as you raised your children, lost Michael, lost Tom. You deserved better from me. I can't make up for 40 years of silence, but I can ensure you never have to worry about money again. More importantly, I've included provisions to protect you." The private investigator I hired noted some concerning behavior from David. "The estate has safeguards. It can only be distributed to you personally, in person, with multiple forms of verification. No power of attorney can touch it. Be careful, little sister. Not everyone who shares your blood shares your heart." "Harold." James leaned forward. "Your brother was very specific about protections. We've actually recorded all attempts to access the estate information. Your son has called 17 times using different approaches." 17? He's also had a lawyer send 3 different letters claiming to represent you. We've reported it to the Massachusetts Bar Association. I showed James the recordings I'd made, the bank documents showing David's attempted monitoring, the forged medical letters. His expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. "This is serious elder abuse, Mrs. Winters. You could have him arrested today." Number, not yet. If I've learned anything teaching teenagers, it's that sometimes you have to let them hang themselves with their own rope. But I need to protect myself first. We spent 3 hours setting up safeguards. The inheritance would be transferred to a trust only I could access, with Jennifer as backup beneficiary. James connected me with a security firm that specialized in elder protection, and they would start monitoring my house immediately. Most importantly, he gave me a direct line to report any escalation. "Your brother would be proud of how you're handling this," James said as we finished. "He always said you were the fighter in the family." I drove home feeling stronger than I had in months. But I knew the hardest part was coming, pretending nothing had changed while David and Sarah tightened their noose, not knowing I was no longer trapped inside it. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in deception. I played the confused elder perfectly, misplacing my keys while David watched, forgetting Peter's name once, which killed me because I adored that boy, and letting Sarah find me, confused, in the grocery store when I was actually buying hidden cameras for her house when I babysat. David escalated quickly. He scheduled another appointment with Dr. Morrison, this time bringing Sarah as a witness. The good doctor, who I later learned was facing massive gambling debts, performed a competency evaluation that would have been laughable if it weren't so infuriating. "Mrs. Winters, what year is it?" 2024. David coughed loudly. Dr. Morrison made a note. "And who is the president?" I answered correctly, but Sarah interjected. "She said Obama yesterday. Didn't you, Mom?" I hadn't, but Dr. Morrison dutifully wrote it down. The evaluation continued with increasingly ridiculous questions and creative interpretations of my answers. When I said I felt tired, it became chronic confusion and fatigue. When I mentioned missing Tom, it became persistent delusions about deceased spouse. But here's the thing about arrogance. It makes people sloppy. They didn't notice the pen in my pocket recording everything, including Dr. Morrison's whispered conversation with David about payment for his services. 2 days later, a Tuesday, David presented me with papers. "Mom, we're just worried about you. This gives me power of attorney to help manage things. You won't have to worry about bills or complicated financial stuff anymore." I stared at the papers, then at my son, the boy I'd nursed through pneumonia, taught to ride a bike, comforted after his first heartbreak. "David, I need to think about this." His face darkened. "There's nothing to think about. You're not capable of making these decisions anymore." "Then maybe we should involve Jennifer." "Jennifer doesn't understand the situation like we do. We're here. We see you every day. Sign the papers, Mom." Sarah stood behind him, Peter on her hip, using my grandson as a prop. "It's for the best, Ruth. We only want to help." I picked up the pen, my hand shaking, with rage, not confusion. Then I set it down. "I need to use the bathroom first." In the bathroom, I texted Jennifer. "They're trying to force POA, recording everything. Stay ready." When I returned, I signed the papers with a shaky hand. David's smile was triumphant. Sarah actually smirked. They had no idea I'd signed Ruth Winters Void in cursive that looked close enough to my regular signature but would never hold up in court, especially with the recording of them pressuring me. But that's not even the worst part. 3 days later, Friday, Sarah called to say they needed me to babysit Peter urgently. When I arrived at their house, a monstrosity of marble and bad taste, she was dressed for a fancy dinner. "We're meeting with the real estate agent about listing your house. Don't wait up." My house. They were already selling my house. Peter, sweet 2-year-old Peter, toddled over with his favorite book. I read him stories, fed him dinner, gave him a bath, all while my heart broke, knowing his parents were trying to destroy me. After he fell asleep, I did what any concerned grandmother would do. I searched their home office and found everything. Contracts with Riverside Manor, the cheapest, most notorious assisted living facility in the state. The kind that gets shut down for violations. Real estate paperwork with my forged signature. Bank documents showing they'd already taken out a loan against my house's value, assuming they'd have ownership soon. And worst of all, an email thread with Dr. Morrison discussing increasing the medication to speed up cognitive decline. They weren't just trying to rob me, they were literally poisoning me. I photographed everything, uploaded it to 3 different cloud services, and emailed copies to Jennifer and James Brennan. Then I found something else, Sarah's journal. The entry from 2 months ago. "David's mother is taking forever to deteriorate. We need that money now. The contractor is threatening to put a lien on the house. Maybe a fall down the stairs would help things along. They were planning to kill me." I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, kissed Peter's sleeping forehead, and waited for them to return. They came home drunk and giggling about their future wealth. "How is Peter?" David asked, not even looking at me. "Perfect as always." "Good. We'll need you to watch him next Thursday, too. We have another meeting with friends." The way he said friends told me everything. The competency hearing. They'd scheduled it without telling me. That weekend, I met with James again, this time with a criminal attorney he'd recommended, Margaret Chen, a tiny woman with a reputation for destroying elder abuse cases. "This is attempted murder," Margaret said flatly after reviewing everything. "The medication alone is assault. We're filing charges Monday." Not yet, I said. Thursday is the competency hearing. I want them to show their hand completely. Margaret smiled slowly. You want to give them enough rope? Exactly. I like you, Ruth. Okay, here's what we do. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Let them think they'd won. Let them present their fraudulent case. Then destroy them with evidence so overwhelming that no judge could ignore it. Monday came with David calling to remind me about a doctor's appointment on Thursday. I played along, even asking what I should wear. His relief was palpable through the phone. Tuesday, Jennifer flew in secretly, staying at a hotel in Boston. We met at a cafe in Cambridge where no one would recognize us. Mom, I've been doing some digging. Sarah's family is broke. Her father's business went under last year. They're desperate. That explains the urgency. There's more. I called Michael's old unit commander. Remember how David handled Michael's death benefits as next of kin because you were too grief-stricken? My blood went cold. He said it all went to Michael's designated charity. There was no charity, Mom. David kept all $400,000. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. Michael had died serving his country, and his own brother had stolen his legacy. We're going to destroy him, Jennifer said quietly. For Michael. Wednesday night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my kitchen, looking at family photos. David's first day of school, his college graduation, his wedding. When had my son become a monster, or had he always been one, and I'd been too blind to see it? Thursday morning dawned gray and drizzly, fitting weather for a betrayal. David picked me up, all false concern and gentle touches. Now, Mom, don't be nervous. This is just a formality. The judge will ask you some questions, and then we can get you the help you need. The courthouse in Burlington was old, all wood panels and echoing halls. David led me to a small conference room where Sarah waited with Dr. Morrison and a lawyer who looked like he'd gotten his degree from a cereal box. Mrs. Winters, the lawyer oozed, I'm Brad Stevenson. I'll be representing your son's interests in ensuring you get proper care. Judge Patricia Hawthorne entered, a woman in her 70s with sharp eyes behind steel-rimmed glasses. I recognized her from library fundraisers. This is a competency hearing for Ruth Marie Winters, age 67. Mr. Stevenson, present your case. What followed was 40 minutes of lies, so elaborate I almost admired the effort. Dr. Morrison testified about my severe cognitive decline. David tearfully described finding me wandering the neighborhood at night. Never happened. Sarah clinically listed financial mistakes I'd supposedly made, including donating $10,000 to a obvious scam charity. The receipt she showed was photoshopped. Through it all, I sat quietly, occasionally asking confused questions that made David smile triumphantly. Finally, Judge Hawthorne turned to me. Mrs. Winters, do you have anything to say? I stood slowly, reaching into my purse. David's lawyer started to object, but the judge silenced him. Your Honor, I have something to show you. I pulled out my phone and hit play on the video I'd queued up. David's voice filled the room. She should be completely out by now. The Ambien dose I've been adding should knock her out for hours. David's face went white. Sarah gasped. The video continued with their conversation about the inheritance, the house, their plans. Then Sarah's journal entries appeared on screen, including the one about pushing me down the stairs. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady now. I also have here sworn affidavits from my daughter Jennifer, 3 neighbors who witnessed my son searching my mail, and security footage from my home showing David and Sarah breaking in at night. Margaret Chen chose that moment to enter, along with Jennifer and James Brennan. Your Honor, Margaret announced, I'm representing Mrs. Winters, and we're filing emergency charges of elder abuse, attempted murder, fraud, and theft of military death benefits. The room erupted. David jumped up, shouting that I was lying, that I was crazy. Sarah tried to run, but was blocked by the bailiff Judge Hawthorne had quietly signaled. Furthermore, James Brennan stepped forward. I'm the executor of Harold Winters' estate. Mrs. Ruth Winters is the sole beneficiary of a $50 million inheritance, which her son has been attempting to steal through fraud and force. The number hung in the air. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Doctor. Morrison tried to slip out, but was stopped by a detective Margaret had arranged to be waiting. "Dr. Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder abuse and filing false medical reports," the detective said, cuffing him. Judge Hawthorne's gavel came down hard. "This competency hearing is dismissed. Mrs. Winters is clearly of sound mind. Mr. Winters, Mrs. Winters, you're both under arrest. Bailiff? Mom?" David turned to me, his eyes wide. "Mom, please, I'm your son. We're family." "No," I said quietly. "Michael was family. Jennifer is family. You're just someone I used to know." As they led him away, Sarah spat at me. "You manipulative old bitch! You planned this!" "Actually," I said, "you planned this. I just made sure you got caught." The aftermath was swift. David and Sarah were charged with multiple felonies. Their house, the one they'd mortgaged based on my assumed assets, went into foreclosure. Sarah's parents disowned her when the story hit the papers. Local teacher exposes children's murder plot, inherits millions. Dr. Morrison lost his license and served 3 years. Brad Stevenson was disbarred for ethics violations. But here's the thing about revenge. It's hollow without justice. So I used Harold's money to establish the Michael Winters Foundation for Veterans Families. The first grant went to renovating Riverside Manor into an actual dignified assisted living facility, with the stipulation that David and Sarah could never work in elder care. Jennifer and Marie moved back to Vermont with their newly adopted daughter. Yes, I became a grandmother again at 67. We named her Michelle, after Michael. Peter lives with me now. David and Sarah lost custody when the attempted poisoning came to light. He's 5, smart as a whip, and nothing like his parents. Sometimes he asks why Mommy and Daddy can't visit. I tell him they're in timeout for being mean to Grandma. He understands timeouts. I kept my house, of course. Painted it yellow like I'd always wanted, but Tom said was too bold. I travel now, saw the Northern Lights last month, planning on Greece next spring. Harold's penthouse in San Francisco became a retreat for veterans' families visiting the city for medical treatment. The money isn't what matters, though it's nice not worrying about bills or leaving something for Jennifer and Peter. What matters is that I'm still here, still myself, still free. Blood is thicker than water, but apparently not thicker than money. They thought I was just a helpless old woman, too old and stupid to fight back. 40 years of teaching teenagers had prepared me for manipulation, but nothing prepares you for the moment your own child looks at you and sees nothing but dollar signs. At my age, you're supposed to be slowing down, trusting your children to care for you eventually. Instead, I learned to install hidden cameras, work with criminal lawyers, and protect myself from the very people who should have protected me. Some nights I sit on my porch, the one David and Sarah planned to sell, and I think about Harold. He knew. Somehow, from across the country and decades of silence, he knew I'd need protection. His money saved me, but more than that, his foresight gave me the tools to save myself. I think about Michael, too. His death benefits finally went where they belonged, to veterans' charities he would have chosen. David has to live with that theft along with everything else. Orange isn't a good color on him, according to Jennifer, who visited him once to tell him exactly what she thought of him. Sarah's in a women's facility across the state. I heard she spends her time writing appeals that go nowhere. The evidence was too overwhelming, the jury too disgusted. Elder abuse, attempted murder, and fraud carry heavy sentences when combined. Sometimes people ask if I forgive them. The answer is no. Forgiveness is for mistakes, for hurt caused by carelessness or misunderstanding. What they did was calculated evil. They looked at the woman who gave them life, who loved them unconditionally, and saw an obstacle to wealth. But I don't dwell on hate. I have Peter to raise, Jennifer to love, Michelle to spoil. I have bridge on Thursdays with ladies who call me that badass who took down her own kids with admiration. I have the library where I now fund an entire wing dedicated to elder resources and legal aid. I have my life, my dignity, my freedom. They tried to take all of it and instead lost everything themselves. Yesterday was Thanksgiving again. Jennifer, Marie, Michelle, Peter, and I sat around my table, the same one where Sarah announced my fate 3 years ago. We went around saying what we were grateful for. Peter, now 5, said, "I'm grateful Grandma is brave." Out of the mouths of babes. I'm 70 now. My knees crack when I stand. I need reading glasses for everything, and I sometimes forget where I put my keys, for real this time. But I'm sharper than ever where it counts. I know who loves me and who doesn't. I know that family isn't blood. It's choice, loyalty, and respect. Harold knew that. He chose to protect me even though we hadn't spoken in 40 years. Jennifer knows that. She chose to believe me immediately, no questions asked. Peter will grow up knowing that too. The doorbell rang last week. A young woman stood there with a clipboard, asking if I'd considered planning for my final years with their estate planning services. I laughed so hard she backed away nervously. "Honey," I told her, "I've got the best estate planning possible. A family that actually loves me and a lawyer on speed dial who eats con artists for breakfast." She left quickly. I'm sure I'm marked as difficult in some database now. Good. People underestimate older women. They see gray hair and wrinkles and assume we're weak, confused, easily manipulated. They forget we've survived everything life threw at us: childbirth, sexism, loss, heartbreak, and decades of being told we're too emotional, too soft, too whatever. We're not soft. We're steel-wrapped in cardigans and cookies. We've watched the world change, adapted, survived, and thrived. We've raised children, buried parents, lost loves, and kept going. And when someone tries to take what we've earned, what we've built, what we deserve, well, they learn that hell hath no fury like a grandmother scorned. David will be eligible for parole in 15 years. He'll be in his 50s, starting over with nothing. Sarah gets out 2 years later. They'll never be allowed near Peter or me again. Permanent restraining orders ensure that. Sometimes I wonder what Tom would think of all this. He always said David was too ambitious for his own good, too willing to cut corners. "Watch that one, Ruthie," he'd say after David would leave from Sunday dinners, always talking about his next big scheme. He loves the idea of success more than he loves anything else. Tom was right. David loved money more than his mother, more than his son, more than his own freedom. And in the end, that love destroyed him. But you know what? I'm done dwelling on the past. Tomorrow I'm taking Peter to pick out a Christmas tree, a massive one that'll shed needles everywhere and drive me crazy. Jennifer and family are coming for the holidays. I'm cooking Tom's famous prime rib recipe and Harold's favorite dessert. Found it in his penthouse. Turns out my brother became quite the baker. Life goes on. It goes on stronger, safer, and sweeter when you face the worst and survived. They thought they could throw me away like garbage, lock me in some cut-rate facility while they spent my money. Instead, I'm living my best life at 70, with more money than I can spend, family who truly loves me, and the satisfaction of knowing justice was served ice cold, just the way revenge should be. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.